Welcome to yet another episode of Non-Fungible Tuesdays here on Elio Trades Crypto. Today we have an absolutely amazing show where we're going to bring on billionaire unicorn investor Yat Siu from Animoca Brands, which has just cemented itself as one of the most legendary companies in the NFT space, having backed companies like Dapper Labs, Sandbox, Axie Infinity, OpenSea, and more. We're going to bring on Yat to explain the wild trend of play-to-earn gaming, where people are literally becoming millionaires from playing video games. It's happening right in front of you, and it is something quite interesting to behold. We're also going to be giving away 1,000 NFTs. Yes, 1,000 NFTs. And if you guys are excited, meaning that probably a lot of you will get one, then go ahead, destroy that like button, because today's episode is going to be jam-packed from front to back with information, insights, and giveaways. That's right. Get excited because Non-Fungible Tuesdays is coming at you. And today we have an absolutely amazing show in store. Now, if you guys want more content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button and put that little bell notification on. That way you're made aware whenever we come out with new content, which is happening at least once, sometimes twice a day here on the channel, and it will only continue to grow. You're definitely going to want to have that bell notification on. With that said, remember each and every comment on this video is also entered to win your own hardware wallet. And with that said, let's dive into the meat of this content. Now, first and foremost, what we need to talk about here is the play-to-earn trend. Big shout out to everyone in the audience very quickly. I see a couple of super chats already coming in. Thank you for the super chats. I am so excited to give away some NFTs today. Yes, it is ET World today. Thank you, Motorhead Racing. So today we're going to talk about this trend because this is absolutely mind-boggling and nuts. This is a true story of someone whose 12-year-old started playing Axie Infinity for SLP in 2020, right? This is back when, Axie Infinity was very cheap. Here, we can go ahead and see what SLP was priced at. But anyway, what you need to know is that this person's 12-year-old started playing Axie Infinity last year, I know, all the way 12 months ago, and swapped their SLP for ETH. So the way Axie Infinity works is they give you SLP, which is this smooth love potion that you earn in the game. Now, SLP is inflationary and it is used for breeding. However, the SLP can also interact with the AXS token is kind of how people are getting attached to the whole ecosystem. It's the governance token that's fixed supply. But anyway, so this 12-year-old started swapping their SLP for ETH. So they had initiated a Uniswap transaction. Therefore, they got the Uni airdrop during last year's DeFi Mania when Uni added their token to compete with Sushi. Now, once they used the Uni token airdrop to buy AXS at 12 cents. If you remember, the Uni airdrop was like $2,000 at the beginning. I don't know exactly when they did this, but they bought AXS at 12 cents. Now, we know how that story goes because AXS here has made its way up to the hallowed ground of $74, aka $4.2 billion circulating market cap and $20 billion fully diluted market cap. Absolutely eye-watering and astounding. But let's go back because you need to follow this story. So they used the Uni airdrop to buy AXS. Let's just say it was $2,000 or something, just to make it easier, even $1,000, just to make this easy math, at 12 cents. Well, 12 cents, and then they sold it at $48. Well, 12 cents to $48 is, what is that? 10, 100, 400x, 400x here on their $1,000. So say that $1,000, that's a $400,000 gain. If it was $2,000, which I think it was more accurate, that would be an $800,000 gain. But that's not all, because they bought YGG, which was Yield Guild Games, which we're going to talk about as well, as this is another project associated with Animoca Brands, because they just can't stop picking winners at $1. And YGG is now at $7. So they took their $800,000 and they 7x'd it from there. So this person is a multi-millionaire here at 12 years old. According to this parent, he has way more money than I ever did until very recently, is in 7th grade, and plays Genshin Impact all day. This is the world that we're living in. This is the world of free-to-play, play-to-earn games that actually enrich you. And if you guys are excited for what we have in store, I highly encourage you guys to destroy that like button. 770 of you in here, please go ahead, hit that like button, because we have Yat Siu, one of the absolute industry leaders and visionaries for what this industry could accomplish, laying in wait, ready to educate you guys in just a few minutes here. But this is the nature of the game right now. This is what's going on, and it is changing lives. And this 12-year-old didn't do anything but pick up a game and just interact with the ecosystem. And so they started with literally nothing, and they ended up with millions of dollars. This is real. And this is the path that many, many kids, many, many adults, many, many people throughout the world will start taking to completely change their lives through the absolute revolution that is blockchain gaming with NFTs and play to earn. Looking at the markets today, we see that we are still struggling a little bit around this 45K area. Like I said, I'm looking for a little bit of a pullback. I know that a lot of people are looking for this pullback right now, so it'll probably be that dips get bought up and we don't dip as deep as anyone would like. Maybe those low 40s and high 30s bids will never get filled, but regardless, I'm looking for a little bit of a tilt back, a little bit of a rugged scenario here where people can get a little panicky for me to get some more bids in. Regardless, what we see is things are pretty much flat except for the music category. And this is because of a massive NFT project breakthrough in the form of Audius. Now, let me actually talk for a second about Audius first, which is Audius here is the first project to actually partner here with TikTok. That's right. The biggest social media network in the world, TikTok, right now, the most important social media network, at least, they are now integrated with Audius. And if you guys don't know what Audius is, Audius lets you stream. It's essentially an NFT and decentralized music streaming service. And they now allow their artists to integrate their songs directly into TikTok, which is an absolutely fantastic step forward for the at least NFT music scene, the decentralized music scene. And Audius is really the first mover, the best project we have that can actually try to equate to some kind of decentralized Spotify. So this is a fantastic, fantastic step forward. Of course, it should be no surprise that Audius absolutely exploded here at one point, doing over 100% gains. You can see here on the chart where this news was announced, and they went from about, what was it, a $1.71 project up to over $3, almost $4. So a massive, massive growth there on this news, which is very, very FOMO worthy indeed. Now, before we dive into an entire gambit of NFT news, I just wanted to reiterate the importance of Ethereum right now, because Ethereum 2 liquid staking has crossed over the million ETH threshold here. And that means here that they are now the number one ETH 2.0. Actually, sorry, it's up to 6.7 million ETH, is now the largest holder of Ethereum. Now, this is huge because the transition to proof of stake and the continual evolution of Ethereum's base layer technology is super bullish, not just for Ether, the asset, but for the entire industry. And it directly impacts the NFT industry, which happens for the most part directly on chain on layer one. So this is a massive, massive step forward. And in my opinion, the transition and the growth of Ethereum from EIP 1559 to ETH proof of stake to ETH 2.0 and sharding, all of these things are some of the most important fundamental factors in the growth of this industry. Now, I also wanted to touch on this. We have Arbitrum, Arbitrum 1, which is an L2 solution that is not specific to NFTs like Immutable X, but this is a massive, massive project. And they have all of these projects, Aave, Alchemy, Amy Finance, Anchor, AnySwap, Octave. You could just see there's literally countless projects here, all the big boys of DeFi, the big powers that be on Ethereum that have high throughput, high volume. They're all moving to L2, which is going to more optimize the L1, the Ethereum base layer chain. This is a huge, huge step forward. What's happening right now between NFTs, DeFi, and scaling solutions for Ethereum, as well as Ethereum layer one upgrades, is nothing short of a renaissance. I want you guys to understand this. This is a massive, massive pivot in the history of the technology that is Ethereum. If you guys are excited for an absolutely astounding change to the Ethereum base layer, then smash those likes, because you're definitely going to be excited when you see the world that is a scalable future for ETH. What do I think of Osmosis Dex? I will come back to this. I haven't looked into it. Thank you for the super chat. We also have a world where you need to understand that the switch to the ETH2 beacon chain is hitting soon. That this upgrade will bring the light client support and increase slashing penalties. And this is getting the network warmed up for an eventual merger of ETH1 and ETH2. The point is that I'm making here is that the building blocks leading to ETH2 are coming. And this is so wildly bullish for the NFT and DeFi industries. It boggles the mind. So you need to be here and participating. And the earlier you come into this industry, the better. Because as these things take effect, the actual mainstreaming of these assets will occur. I believe that. Now, a quick tweet scan here. We have more talk of the flippening. We'll see if that happens. We have a $6.6 million sale of a baseball card. And this to me is like the offline NFT. And what's interesting is that this is the most expensive card of all time. And this is quite clearly a piece of history. But you see here that the actual valuations being attached to baseball cards are almost nothing when you compare them to what's going on in NFTs, which regularly reach the millions of dollars in value and regularly reach 8 figures as well. What happened in NFTs, and my theory about NFTs and why they are so valuable and will continue to hold value, is that everything when it hits cryptocurrency has a 10 or 100x multiplier effect on valuations. And that's because of the nature of crypto is exponential and the nature of open markets is exponential. I didn't know about this sale. I couldn't have easily participated in this sale, I don't think, whereas I can easily participate on OpenSea. And that really brings up some interesting questions about OpenSea itself, which is OpenSea has now passed Etsy in volume. It's got over $1 billion in volume right now in August. OpenSea is something that people regularly complain about the UX as well. Here we see tweets about people saying they don't like OpenSea. The purchasing experience is tricky and clunky. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that it is a relatively complex endeavor to go buy NFTs right now. It's not unique to OpenSea. But just to think that we're passing Etsy in volume, $1 billion so far in August, and this stuff is impossibly difficult to use. Can you imagine how big this industry is going to get when we have proper UX, fiat on-ramps, and the ability to appeal to all kinds of mainstream audiences? This industry is going to absolutely explode. And it is a renaissance, to say the least, here in NFT land. So big congrats to OpenSea. Again, this is a project backed by Yat Siu and Animoca brands. And we cannot wait to bring Yat up here in just 1 minute as we get through the rest of these headlines. Again, Yet DCL Blogger, one of my favorite commentators on the industry, also saying the UX for the NFT industry sucks. Again, this is a huge testament to how early we are. And it's absolutely incredible how far we've come so quickly. I also wanted to show this. We can return back to this here, but a lot of people ask about the anatomy, these early historic NFTs. And so I'm going to come back to this after the Yat interview, but this is a fantastic way to understand all of these super early, super pioneering NFT projects, because those are ones that have started to get astronomical values, and people are making cases for all of these in very different ways as to why these should be stores of value or historic on-chain assets. So I wanted to flash this up. You guys can pause the screen here and check these out. Obviously, CryptoPunks, we know the story there, but there's a lot of projects in here that don't have the same level of excitement, the same level of price appreciation that you've seen with CryptoPunks. And for that reason, they're worth potentially looking into, as they might be undervalued long term. And finally, what we need to understand, because there's a lot of misunderstandings, people who want to relate NFTs to other paradigms when they have to understand this is a brand new paradigm. This is from Beanie Maxi. My biggest mistake as an investor is being too analytical in a transformational market trend. This is where you need to understand just how massive the trends could be. Looking at OpenSea, for example, what we'll talk about in just 1 second is OpenSea's volumes and user base was pretty much non-existent throughout 2018 and 2019, and even 2020. Then we get 2021 and we get a paradigm shift. And that's where you really need to have a thesis for investing that's not so analytical. Because if we're just looking at users throughout 2018 and 2019 and 2020, you might have a pretty bearish outlook on NFTs. But if you have a thesis-based investing, then you can really sort of leapfrog over those things that might be holding you back to understand that a paradigm shift is imminent. Now, with that said, let's bring on Yat Siu. Before we go too much deeper here, we still have a ton more to cover. I'm going to go ahead and put this this anatomy of the historical projects here. for after the interview. But now it's time to bring on the guest of honor, who I am so excited to have on the show, Mr. Yat Siu from Animoca Brands. Yat, thank you so much for joining us. It is an absolute pleasure to have you on the stream.
Hey there, pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here as well. It's great to be here.
So Yat, I have so many questions. Let's just start at the beginning. Who is Yat Siu, and how did you come to start or run this company, Animoca Brands?
Well, so I guess the journey for me started really much earlier than just Animoca, because I think what we're doing and sort of the conviction we have in the NFT space is really a collection of, I would say, 3-4 decades of my life. I was one of the very first people to build essentially an ISP in Hong Kong called Hong Kong Online in '93. I made many of my sort of earliest friendships and connections online in pre-internet days, when I was basically sort of building software and selling it on CompuServe. That's how it got me a job in Atari. This was in the '80s, right? One of the first cloud computing businesses, wasn't called cloud back then, in '98, which was then sold to IBM, but using a lot of open source software, and so on and so forth, right? And sort of all of that generational sort of historic sort of, witnessing of what was going on in pre-internet days and internet days kind of led me to sort of where I think NFTs are, right? And, the prehistory is that Animoca Brands was really a spin-off of a company called Outplace, which is our holding company, but had many sort of built many technology companies in this region, and was really a mobile gaming company, and I guess reasonably successful. But we really got into the NFT space because of CryptoKitties. What happened was that one of the co-founders of CryptoKitties, who was not yet working at what became Dapper Labs because it wasn't established yet, was basically involved in CryptoKitties, sharing an office with Axiom Zen in Vancouver. And we were in the middle of finishing the acquisition of his studio when CryptoKitties just took off in November of 2017. At which point, there was a conversation. Roham invited Mick to join as a co-founder of what became Dapper Labs. And we said, fine, we're good with that. But one, we need to become publishers of CryptoKitties in our region, and we need to become investors and get involved in this. And just to give you an illustration, we became publishers of CryptoKitties in Asia in January of 2018. So, we really, really went in like literally just 2 months after it was launched, and we went all in afterwards. And I think for us, really, we've done over 80 investments now in the NFT space. And you got to remember, in 2018, it was really crypto winter at that point. And so we were investors in OpenSea, obviously Dapper Labs, Axie Infinity. We own the Sandbox. We've done so many, Wax, Decentraland, Bitski. I mean, many of the names you will have heard of today, we've had our involvement in them. And we felt that we needed to be ecosystem investors as well. I saw parallels of the internet. We wanted this to be an open and interoperable space. We spoke about interoperable assets in a conference in early 2018. I remember the blank faces going, what's he talking about? In terms of content being the platform, in terms of how this could really sort of create a creative revolution. And it was kind of early, but for us, the vision was super clear. And that's kind of, why. And of course, I think the vision for Animoca Brands became more crystallized as the market developed, but we always felt it was the right thing to do because it was just, good for gamers, good for creators. It was just, Web3. It was the better internet. It was what the internet was promised to be when, we were first engaged with this in the '90s. So it was just a better version of it.
So, I'm absolutely fascinated because throughout my time in 2018, my business partner and I were looking at the industry, super excited about crypto, and everyone was leaving. Everyone was running away from crypto as fast as they could. And I couldn't understand it because it was so clearly the next, industry for innovation. It was clearly the next layer on the internet. And I couldn't imagine that people didn't realize that. And so we kept going through products. We're like, oh, well, what if we did a product like this? What if we did a product like this? There needs to be a hit product that keeps people in. And we kept coming around every single time to gaming and NFTs. And we said, okay, well, if people were playing a game they liked and there was NFT ecosystem and economy in there, it wouldn't matter what the price of Bitcoin was. And that was sort of our thesis, was that this product could overcome this the interwoven nature of crypto, where Bitcoin goes up and everything pumps, and Bitcoin goes down and everything is apocalyptic. And we see that as good for some bull runs, but really horrible for the bear markets. And during this time, we get news article after news article. Animoca has just invested in this. Animoca has just invested in this. And I knew the whole time that you guys were absolutely blazing a trail for everyone else. And I just wonder, how did you reach that level of conviction for NFTs, specifically with NFTs and gaming?
Well, I mean, I guess it was pretty natural for us, partially because we've been in the gaming space for a long time. I bought my first virtual gaming asset in the early 90s in a multi-user dungeon. For those who remember what that is, that's an online game where it was entirely text-based. Like, we would literally type in, like, go left, go right, look here, right? That was the game, right? And it was basically like, metaverse primitive version, right? But it was basically that, and it was real to us, and we made real friends, had real relationships, and bought sort of assets because it gave us social status. It gave us ways to interoperate. So for me, it was natural because I understood when we saw what NFTs could be, that this was actually a way in which gamers could truly own their assets. And, as you talk about gaming and non-fungible tokens, I mean, that is, our playbook, right? But the other thing here, what was interesting to notice, is that with the gaming audiences, we think of that as Metaverse Lite, like a 0.5 edition, because they're all already in the virtual world. If you buy a virtual sword, if you buy a skin, you don't think of it as rental. You think of it as ownership, even though, in fact, it's not. And so we felt that it was going to be much easier to convert people in the gaming world than it would be otherwise, because they intrinsically understood what that is. And I think where a lot of people struggle is because in the physical world, we're often connected to physical assets. So we think of things in terms of, oh, I need to touch and feel it. It needs to be real or something. I buy a handbag, it's real. But what's funny? If you buy a Hermes handbag, what are you paying for? 99% of the value you're paying for is something entirely creative, entirely virtual. And if you're buying a diamond, what are you paying for? You're paying, yes, you can touch it physically, but the value that you're buying for is basically entirely virtual. And in fact, when you start looking at it from that lens, you come to realize, actually, wait a second, is everything I buy in the physical world, in fact, virtual in its value? Because intrinsically, the material cost is clearly not sort of the value, right? Whether it's clothing, shoes, fashion items, luxury brands, you name it, it's a creative output. And so for us, that's what NFTs represented. And so for us, it was, so clear. And we just, and how do we build this conviction? I don't know. I don't know that it's a question of, we were living it, right? So it wasn't really a case of, what's a thesis? Yes, we have a thesis, but where do you think the market will go? It was just inevitable, right? And sometimes it's about timing too. You could definitely argue that, investing in NFTs in 2018, as perhaps sort of, foresight it might look like today, certainly didn't look like great foresight in 2018. And I would also argue that had we made those same investments in 2019, because they were open for investments, because frankly speaking, the market still wasn't great, right? That actually, it may have been a better return ratio because, we didn't have a whole year of a winter in which we had to basically fork in capital for stuff, right? So, so timing is important. When you look at sort of, the innovation curve, you want to try to get as an investor in a space where you're at the early adopter stage. And that's where everyone struggles. So people don't necessarily say that the vision is wrong, but it's just how early in the innovator stage am I? Because that innovator stage could be 10 years, right? And so we've had our own experiences. When I built an ISP in Hong Kong in 93, the entire world had 300,000 people on the internet, okay? Of which Hong Kong had like literally nobody. Horrible time to be building an ISP. But again, just like then, I wasn't building an ISP because I had a business plan in mind or something. It was conviction. I said, well, everyone needs the internet, and I'm going to provide it because, it's a good thing to have for everyone. So that's kind of what drives me, rather than necessarily a return ratio. We're not a VC. I don't have a portfolio in terms of an LP fund. I'm not in that sense, it's our own balance sheet capital. So it affords us a long-term view, meaning that even if the NFT market wouldn't have exploded the way that it did recently, we would have continued to make investments, for the long run, because for us, it was just inevitable. If it takes 10 years, we will invest for 10 years. That's kind of how we viewed it.
Beyond it being super admirable, the idealism here. I think it's a really profound observation, the innovator stage versus early adopter stage. And this is something that really magnetized me towards gaming. Because like you said, people are already doing this. There's already $100 billion in real market activity of people buying digital stuff for nothing more than seeing it on their character and using it. And that is product market fit, right? And that's something that pretty much the entirety of crypto has struggled with, is to actually have a product that people want to use today instead of, 5-10 years from now. And so to me, the gaming thing was the only real product that was digital native and really made sense to go to mass adoption. Now, like you, I think there's something really profound that I realized about the virtual valuations of things, right? Which is, why do I buy a Ferrari and not a Fiat? Why do I want the Rolex watch? When I already have the time on my iPhone, right? Why do I want these things? Is because it makes me feel superior status. It attracts the attention I want. And then you start running through the data, which is, well, how many people see me wear this watch in a day, on an average day? Whereas how many people see my NFT on the internet, right? Like I have right now behind us, one of my NFTs I bought as the background here. And we have here 1,230 people looking at it right now. I'd never see 1,230 people in my day, no matter, I mean, maybe if I was a really long drive. But the point is that there is something really profound about the actual value that you get from NFTs as far as why we buy physical things. And I think that that's astounding. But like you, I thought that would be in the innovation zone before mainstream for several more years. But I want to come back to this, but I want to stay focused first on gaming.
Sure.
What's going on with gaming? And can you talk about some of the projects that you guys have backed in the space, why you did it, and where you think the sort of gaming revolution, the blockchain gaming revolution, sits today?
Well, so first of all, it's an incredibly exciting time. I mean, whether you call it sort of blockchain gaming, GameFi or yield gaming, whatever you want to call it, the blockchain gaming space is very much on fire. But one thing to remember, first of all, there's 2.7 billion gamers in the world, which is more than 60% of the world's internet. So that's pretty big. And it happens to be also something that is generally dominated by millennials and under, meaning it's a predominantly young space. So, a recent study from the Pew Research Group basically, said 91% of all children play games regularly. And my only question is, what happened to the other 9%? It's like, wait, what? It's not 100%? But anyway, so, diversity and inclusion. So yes, there's a market that doesn't play games. But what that also means is that the audience that's going to game, those 91%, as we know with gaming, they're going to keep gaming when they get older, right? This is the thing, right? And so while our older generations may not be playing in terms of ratio as many games, that's because we had a lower ratio to begin with. And gaming follows us, right? Which means that if you thought that we already have a big number at 2.7 billion gamers today, you haven't seen anything yet. Meaning that we're going to have, 90% of the world's internet basically playing games. So that's one thing. And the other thing I look at it as well is, generally speaking, what is life? In some ways, life is a game, right? Everything around it is essentially gamified. Maybe a bad game, maybe an unfair game, but a game nevertheless, right? And sort of what we exist in that. And that's kind of where blockchain gaming comes in, and this thing that we talk so often about, the metaverse, which is basically this virtual plane where you can exist, where you can actually exist perhaps in a better way, where in fact many of us exist because we much prefer it, and we spend so much time on these virtual worlds. Now, the thing is, because all these people are playing games, experiencing it, they're not getting any value for their time, which is why play to earn is so fascinating, because really what we're doing is we're rewarding our time playing these games. And we're rewarding really the scarcity of our efforts, which is key here. Because when people talked about NFTs and where people got sort of all hung up about, often, traditional crypto guys who don't really understand NFTs, they often focus around, oh, but you can copy NFTs and it's not really real and all that kind of stuff. There's no sort of fixed scarcity. The fixed scarcity is not really what's important here. What's important here is what your relationship is to the asset, how much time you spend on it, what you do to this, and your time, and it's your personal time. Because the most scarcest thing we have as people is our time. It doesn't come back. This conversation, wonderful. It doesn't come back, right? Mistakes we made, doesn't come back. Discoveries or successes, doesn't come back. that time is inevitable. And so that's actually the most precious thing. And we derive that precious value through activities. Like I take a job, I spend time, that time I spend, I make money. That's one derivative of it, right? But right now in the virtual world, especially in playing games, I spend all this time, I get nothing for it. And the small amount that I get value for, which is social and so on, is a tiny amount relative to what the studio or the game company traditionally receives, which is 99% of the value, arguably 100%, because they take 100% of the take rate. They take everything, right? And so I think this to me is why sort of gaming is ripe for that change. It's just a matter of understanding. Now, when you think about the space and why it's exploded, whether it's Axie Infinity or Sandbox, or even recently launched Rev Racing, just exploded, or sort of F1 Delta Time, or Nine Chronicles, or you name it, right? All of these games are going up. It's because we've also moved in terms of value from a rental economy, which is what gaming sort of traditional gaming is, to one of ownership, which is what we're seeing today with NFTs, because you own your assets. Now, why is that important? Because when you own these assets, all the P2p ownership economics come into play. And so the value explosion begins, meaning you can have $1 billion economy on 1 million users, which, by the way, is small when you compare that to a city economy. A city economy of a population of 1 million people is worth billions of dollars, right? But in the gaming world, we're not accustomed to this. We think 1 million players is equivalent to maybe millions of dollars, because we're basically really not getting all the value. And when I talk about P2p ownership economics, what I mean is that because we have an ownership, the third parties can start providing services in a very user-generated and sort of free manner that we no longer control, that gives it that freedom and therefore that trade effect. When you buy a car, for instance, do you buy the car? What is your decision-making tree when you buy a car? Do you buy an Alfa Romeo, great car, by the way, or do you want to buy a Tesla? What's the decision between them? Maybe you'll buy the Tesla because they've got more charging stations. Maybe you buy the Tesla because it has more mechanics. Maybe you buy a Tesla because all your friends have it and they think it's really cool. And therefore, your decision in buying the Tesla has very little to do with maybe the design of the car or the physicality of the car, but with many, many external factors. Because if there were no charge stations around your neighborhood, you probably won't buy a Tesla. But the charge station setup or the mechanics or that sort of accessorization support for that car is not related to Tesla. It's a third-party company or a third-party service provider who added that value. And this, therefore, created the Tesla we see today, but also created an ecosystem around Tesla that is actually far greater than Tesla itself because of the number of people it employs, the job opportunities, the revenues, and all that kind of stuff. When you think of electricity, when you think of the roads that are being built, parking lots, all that stuff. This is where NFTs are headed. And so here we go, right? If you look at games like Axie Infinity, it only could grow to the size because third parties came in and built entire businesses on top of it, or Sandbox, people developing real estate on top of it, or in Rev Racing, buying cars and trading them and building racing teams. It's independent of us, right? But that freedom is what gives it life.
So, I mean, there's so many profound insights in that last rant you had. I can't even unwind them all. It's so educational to hear you speak. Guys, if you guys are learning from this, please smash that like button, show this content to more viewers, because this is absolute gold. Thank you so much, Yat. How important is it to have these philosophical approaches to the market in your decision-making to investing? Because a lot of what you're explaining isn't based on, hey, we saw this much users, so we decided to invest, or hey, we saw this, metric, so we decided it was a good investment. All of these are theoretical and philosophical investments is what it feels like.
It is, because it's principle-based and it's based on where we want the future to be, right? So because we're not a VC fund, we're not really sort of driven towards a return basis that is just money driven. And one of the things that I always believe very strongly is that you want to do something that has impact and purpose, because that's how you get up. I mean, I don't get a lot of sleep, but I'm excited about what I do because I feel like we're changing the world for the better. And that's the kind of energy that it's just not something that I feel blessed that I can be in a space where I can do this. And now I think the philosophy comes, on a few things. One of them is I want to see the space develop in an open manner. I believe in free trade. I believe in capitalism, right? And frankly, one of the things, ironically, is despite the fact that many of those game studios and platforms are capitalist companies, actually the way they operate their own games is very anti-capitalist, right? And that goes against, it's a conflict of values, right? But to make it really open, you may need to make sure that these assets are interoperable. So that's one of our key components in terms of how we think about investing. Is that a company, is that a team of people who believe in an open future, who believe in effectively free trade, and who believe that we need to be creating interoperable assets? Because to me, that's the effect that we need to create. The world in which the creative economy is going to succeed is where we respect the creative rights. And right now we don't, because we've given it to the platforms. And so that's something that we don't really have. And going for people who understand it and who believe in this, to me, is the way that we want to invest, right? If I believe in this, then I believe in a purpose that is greater than myself, right? I believe in a bigger movement, right? It's like, I remember in the early days of open source, right, where we contributed free code into people and to share, and then other people contributed free code. We didn't do it for money because there was no money involved in this. We did it because we wanted to give people more free code, and it's because of that open source code that now a 5-person or 10-person organization can compete with Google, right? And likewise, Google or Huawei or Lenovo have to contribute back, because the network effect of open source is so powerful that they can't ignore it. One of the funny things is, back like maybe 10 years ago or earlier, China actually tried to block GitHub because it had subversive code. And within 2 weeks, they had to open it up. They don't even open up the firewalls for general content, but they had to open up GitHub because the knowledge of open source was just too rich. Because if they didn't open it up, you might not have Lenovo or Baidu or Tencent, all these things, right? And that's the effect we want to build with NFTs. We think digital assets, open digital assets like NFTs, are going to do what open source did to code. And if we have that effect, then we're all going to be building on top, building layers of experiences, adding so much value. And we see some of this when you look at CryptoPunks or Bored Apes or Sandbox Land, right? The interoperability and the activity there is so rich. They have staying power, but now also people add on top of it, and that network effect is layered on top, and the people who own it own a piece of that network effect, which I think is key. So that's a philosophy, right? And if you believe in that, then you will toil and work towards it. Investing in Axie Infinity, they believed in that vision as well. But you know what? It was tough back then. Raising that first $800,000 round was almost impossible, right? And we led that round, and we brought in Hash and friends and everything, but it was tough, right? And they hardly had any revenue, right? These were just people with a vision, but they believed in it. And through the winter of this NFTs period, could they actually have built this if it was about money? No, because frankly, there's a lot of easier ways to make money, right? You could trade, you could change jobs, all that kind of stuff. Why do you have to suffer and struggle through what might not work out, right? Mm-hmm. But if you believe in it, if you really think, this is a short-term thing or a long-term thing, but it's a really important thing I'm working on, then you will toil through this, and eventually you will succeed. And so that's basically the kind of companies and founders that we want to seed and fund, because we think they'll find a way. Very few times do you invest in a company who set out to build it this way, that exactly the way they designed it, it's going to come out. It doesn't happen this way, right? So you're really investing in someone who's willing to meander and travel through that journey until he gets there, because it's so important.
And I couldn't agree more. And again, you keep reiterating the belief sets that bring you to these conclusions. And in this world of crypto, where every day there's a new shiny object, you really need to have those sort of core thesis-based rails that keep you focused. And I guess right now, I just want to push you a little further to talk about what's going on with Axie, because like you said, you saw this from the very beginning when there was very little money and you could barely raise an $800,000 round, which they might sneeze and lose $800,000 in 5 seconds right now, because it is quite literally one of the most explosive and exponentially growing products of all time. What's the deal with Axie Infinity? What does it mean for play to earn? And how does the audience understand what's going on? How can they contextualize what's going on?
You should look at Axie Infinity as the Angry Birds moment of blockchain gaming. Now, when you think of this, for those of you who remember Angry Birds was not necessarily the very best game in the world, but it was the game that brought the model, the accessibility, and the design to a lot of people, also for the very first time. Meaning that for the first time, people experienced mobile gaming and said, oh, that's kind of fun. I didn't know I could do this as an iPhone. And what that then did was it drove an entire new wave of people into the ecosystem because they were in hunt or in search for other games like it. Right? And so I view Axie Infinity in exactly the same way. It has that moment, which means, therefore, we are now approaching escape velocity for everything related to sort of blockchain gaming as a result of that, because now the awareness is there. Now, what is Axie Infinity? I mean, obviously, many people here have read and heard about it. It is obviously a blockchain game, where you Pokemon meets Neopets meets whatever, right? As a game system. But really, what they've done is they've combined labor and capital as a class together and created an economy through a game simulation that basically has really changed lives. It's a battle game. You can play together. But really, what they've done is they've monetized your time by breeding these axes. Is one way to make these axes which you can sell, and that was perhaps the initial model. But then later on, basically, with a manager and scholarship program, which really sort of created this liftoff, is they created a way in which people who had maybe not time but money could buy essentially these assets and effectively rent them out to players who happened to be in the Philippines at the time, who were struggling with COVID. But they were well educated, as in they spoke good English and they had a mobile phone or they had a digital device, and they could spend some time, playing Axie Infinity or through a rental model, and then would share the revenue with the owner of the assets. Now, we know this model exists today. Whether you call it taxi drivers and taxi medallions, whether you call it shopkeepers and landlords, right? That model is a time-old sort of economic model. And through that system, they've now created an economic revolution, lifting people out of poverty in places like the Philippines, Venezuela, Indonesia, and elsewhere. And now they've come to a point where, with billions of dollars of GMV, with a revenue run rate, I think the monthly revenue is now, north of 150, if not $180 million a month. I mean, you have just kind of sort of contextualized that for a moment, right? It's like, wait, what? What just happened here, right?
So crazy.
and that is on a less than 5% take rate, because essentially it's just a basic tax, because 95% of the value goes back to the players, the managers, the scholars, the owners in the ecosystem of Axie Infinity. Now, this works because the ecosystem is sharing across. And what you can think of it is as a game economy. It's actually a real economy just within a game world. And that's basically how we could view Axie Infinity. The game itself is, for some people, a lot of fun. Maybe not fun for everyone, right? As to me, it's a little bit of the parallel of saying, well, work may be enjoyable for some, but not for everyone either, right? But I think this is why blockchain gaming is so exciting, because nobody said that the whole world likes to play Angry Birds, right? You can play strategy games, first-person shooters, simulation games, RPGs, right? There's so many other kind of games that you can play. Axie Infinity is just, the first one and obviously the biggest one from the time being. So anyway, so that's how I would view Axie Infinity. And you know what? Here's the other thing. There's only about 1 million plus players playing Axie Infinity, driving, $1 billion plus economy. And that, if you thought that was big, consider the fact that, there's billions of people playing games. And, if you logically think about as a gamer, would you rather play a game where your time is rewarded, or would you actually want to sort of, play a game where you get nothing for it? I think it's inconceivable, if you know what the choice is, that you would rather play a game where your time is rewarded. And so I think now, Axie Infinity has really sort of built this model around sort of the scholarship and the scholar model and the manager model by bringing people out sort of from the places who need them. And here's the other thing. Now you have 1 million players that collectively, own, $1 billion, of assets and value. What are they going to do with it, right? It's actually no different than, all those people who bought Bitcoin and who, or Ethereum, and now it's worth a lot. What are they doing with it, right? They're plowing back into the ecosystem, right? And so you should see that effect essentially happening through everything, in the blockchain gaming / GameFi space.
It reminds me of when you heard about those waves of young people who were part of Facebook and Snapchat and these apps, right? And they were in their young 20s or, if that, and they got, millions of dollars because of these huge exits from these companies. And what you see now is that money is now being distributed in some cases to people who are in middle school, right? And so what is someone who's 12 years old, who's made a few $1 million, what are they going to do with that money? They're probably going to deploy it in the most idealistic, unobstructed, unjaded ways. And maybe this is a really interesting pivot for our entire society, is to see capital flow into the hands of those who don't actually, who aren't restricted or colored too much by their life experiences, to think what is or isn't possible. It's a pretty incredible revolution. Now, that said, there's other things that have come out of this, like YGG, right? Mm-hmm. And this is another project that you're involved with that has recently started to reach an amazing, amazing level of success. What is YGG and how does it relate to Axie?
So first, I was on I saw the show that you're pointing out to that tweet, and actually, I think you're pointing out I think it was Gabby's son, right? And Gabby is one of the co-founders of YGG, and I think
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so anyway, great guy, and one of the early OGs in the NFT space. And one of the interesting things on this one, just to cover that part before I go into what YGG is, because I think it's relevant, is that if you think about today's world, right, and actually historically, most of us have very poor financial education. We don't understand the world of finance. It's a little bit of a black box, a little bit of mystery, and some of it may have been busted open with what we see with Wall Street Bets and Robinhood, but we still think of it as fairly opaque because we don't know much about it. And speaking of your jaded experience with finance, I like that perspective because it is true. Our experience with finance for the vast majority of us is one of debt. You go to college and you have debt. And really, what kind of horrible way to first experience a true economic relationship of one of quasi-indentured servitude, where basically you have to pay back for many, many years, if not decades, depending what you're studying, into that, right? It's ridiculous, right? And we have the capacity as children to know about economics at the age of 8 or 9, but our schools don't teach that. Now, what happens, right? I think this is one of the wonderful things about, blockchain gaming, because there's true economic value, is that we can teach our children about real finance. And by the time they go to college, if they even have to go to college, right? And if they want to, they'll have a portfolio. They know finance. They know, how to balance their books. They understand yield, right? And I think what that means is a market that has incredible liquidity, much more transactions, and frankly, the ability to provide more financing because you have more fiscal responsibility. And so enter basically, what is YGG? Well, YGG is basically, I view them as the recruiters of the metaverse, because what they're really doing is they've become essentially, starting with Axie Infinity, the big manager. And they basically are now powering, 3,000 or maybe even more scholars, which means that they directly basically provide loans effectively or rental models for 3,000 players who collectively have generated, $5 million of revenue for themselves and for YGG. And that's basically growing, obviously growing in size as they build out. And they've obviously bought some. We're doing stuff in F1 Delta Time and in Sandbox and in Splinterlands and in Rev Racing and a whole bunch of other ones of our portfolio companies. And I think they provide an invaluable service, and they're leading the charge in this one because they are basically educating the space. To be good at this space, you can't just offer assets. You have to train them, right? And so they're offering really almost social enterprise style, a way in which, hey, use our Axies and come play the game and basically generate some income. And they're going through the effort in teaching them. And for that reward, they get a cut, which they then distribute over to their community managers as a way to balance it out. So I think it's a great model, which is very incentivizing, but it's also very motivating because you're making money while you're doing incredible sort of social good. I think this model will be emulated across the world. I don't think that YGG has to be unique. In fact, for YGG's model to succeed, it ought to be as sort of open and as broad to everyone to do. In fact, I would welcome that. And if someone else says, I want to build another type of YGG for my communities, somewhere around the world, because we can help people in these impoverished environments, come seek us out. We will probably fund you too, because we think of it as a way of growing the space. Because we know that there are physical limits. At the end of the day, that YGG will focus on the markets they're good at, but we want to sort of grow that space larger. Whether you call it a recruitment agency, whether you call it a training facility, I mean, we have that today already, right? In fact, maybe YGG is a university too, in which we're training people about how to play and live in the metaverse, right? And the world doesn't need just one university, as we know. It has tens of thousands, or maybe perhaps hundreds of thousands of them. So that, to me, is that space. This is an opportunity for everyone.
Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, I think a lot of people just need to understand the theory that goes behind these. And then the narratives, of course, in crypto are so powerful. Once people understand, whoa, how big this could be, if everyone started adapting to this new way of life, all of a sudden you get these astronomical valuations, because you know what? They're not that astronomical once you expand them out and start doing the math on what this could look like with more adoption. Now, I do want to quickly interject one project that you also are a supporter and investor in, which is, of course, Superfarm, who has a drop coming up in just 5 minutes here, 4 minutes and 7 seconds here. This is the first artist drop on Superfarm. Just wanted to quickly draw some attention here. If anyone wanted to participate in this, we have a limited edition piece here by a legendary Malaysian street artist named Katun. And we also have an open edition here. The limited edition is on a whitelist, which had a lottery, which those winners are visible on the Superfarm Twitter. And this open edition is open to all. Don't worry about it. You can easily, casually get yours. And 20% of these open editions will evolve into a very special next NFT in a few days' time. So very, very cool drop here. Just wanted to make sure that if anyone wanted to participate in this, that you had the chance, as it's going live here in 3 minutes and 25 seconds. So right there at superfarm.com/drops/Katun. And let's get back here quickly.
I gotta go get myself an ape.
Yeah, you need to get yourself an ape. Yeah, no, I absolutely love the art. I love the artist, and we're really, really proud to help cool artists come into NFTs. This is his first NFT drop. So, and he's very passionate about NFTs, and I think it'll be the first of many amazing drops. So we love to see new artists and talent come to the space. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about a project that we're going to be doing a giveaway for here on the channel. And it is a fantastic project that I've been covering now for almost a year, it feels like, and something that I think is a perfect combination of all of the elements that have really shown themselves as the hits, the rock star ingredients here for the play to earn model. And those are all present in your project, Rev Racing. Well, I guess it's an Animoca investment and not your project, to be precise. Do you want to talk a little bit about Rev Racing, or do you want me to just show the trailer right here, and then we can talk about it after?
Well, I mean, before you show the trailer, one thing to understand: Rev Racing, the underlying token Rev, basically powers everything for the motorsports stuff that we're investing in. So it has F1, Formula E, MotoGP, and Rev Racing basically is the vision to try to create the way that we think the motorverse should be, basically for racing content, in a way that is unrestricted. Because sometimes with license holders, there's some things we can't really do because of branding restrictions. But with Rev, we're building all of our own fantasy cars. We're basically creating a competition. It's skill-based, but also there's value as well. And we're building all of the lessons in this one. It's really only just launched, maybe not even a week ago. As a starting platform, and we've just finished our first race. The next one's coming up very soon. So we think this is the future of racing. So it's alpha, it's early days, but take a look, and let's talk about it after your video.
All right, let's check it out. Wow, adrenaline becomes me. Now I have to claim a little clout here, because the reality is I am a very, very, very proud owner here of my own Rev car. We did a super farm rev car a few weeks ago. And so the entire super community could farm these NFTs for free and claim them just by holding super. For people who are asking, we already have an amazing partnership between Super Farm and Animoca that will continue to grow and evolve over time. And now we have in Elio Trades, as you can see, rev car here, which we'll be giving away 1,000 of these. And all you have to do, there is a Google form in the description of this video. All you have to do is go fill it out. Make sure you're following Rev Racing and make sure that you hold Rev in your Polygon address. And then you will be fully entered to win, right? Yeah, those are the qualifications here.
That's it. Very simple.
And yeah, we look forward to giving these. We have 1,000. So what do we have? 1,500 of you. Almost all of you are going to get one. Make sure you go fill out that form. What's going on with Rev and why is it so special?
Well, first of all, I think one of the exciting things about Rev Racing in particular is that this one is a play-to-earn concept, which is very much skill-based. And now, one of the things that's here relevant is, as for all of us who have played racing games, how do we sort of broaden sort of the esports capability? And one of the things here, again, it's kind of like the parallel before. You can own a car, you may not have the skill, so you'll basically give it to someone who can race it. And it's astounding. In the first race, where we gave out $150,000 worth of prizes, it's astounding to see how many people who were car owners ended up recruiting other people to play because they didn't quite have the skill to do that. And what I even found hearing some of the stories, which was fascinating as well, was they ended up hiring other people who played games in racing games, who were good at racing games. And like, oh, I know you're good at racing games. Do you want to earn some money? I've got an asset. Can you race it for me? And they're like, okay, sure, let me try and give it a shot. And then they got into it, it was fascinating because in that week in which the race was going, we became the #1 blockchain game on Polygon. Right, we had over 60,000 transactions in a very short period of time. And this was just the first race, right? And of course, the other thing is that even though the trading value isn't that high, because we intentionally wanted these first generation cars, which were the tier 1, basically tier 1 cars, not to be expensive. One of the things that we wanted to do with Rev Racing, which we had learned about F1 Delta Time, which is also doing well. It's Formula 1 based game, slightly different gameplay. Prizes are much higher. Is that because it was launched first in really 2019 and launched fully in 2020, you could say, either the models around it, because the scarcity was driven essentially by ownership at the time, which was much smaller, became very expensive. Right, to play F1 Delta Time, you probably need to plonk down, $10,000-$20,000 US, which is, if you're serious, you can make money on this, but most people are not going to be ready to do that. So that's why we're doing the giveaways. And those cars are now trading from a value from 15, 20, 30, depends. In fact, I think the super farm cars, I think are trading for close to $200 or $300 worth, right? Because that skin is a little bit more scarce. Either way, though, people are basically sort of starting with ownership of these cars in a much more inclusive manner. And we'll continue to do that because we want to bring more people in, right? Sort of in the spirit of play to earn. And the play to earn part is going to be you racing. But again, if you don't know how to race that well, you can own the assets. Whether you want to trade them or so on, you can also give it to your friends to play. Now, owning these level 1, tier 1 cars is important because that's the ticket in which you're going to be upgrading to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4. Right? So basically, think of events like these as Genesis events. And then the next step will be the next level where you can basically sort of combine the cars to make a better one, right? So that's one. The other thing that's happening as well with Rev is building as an ecosystem is outside of licenses like Formula E or like race legends like Joey Logano, who basically just recently launched his own car on Rev, is that we have third-party companies like Crypto Motors who are basically designing cars by themselves to be used in the Rev ecosystem and selling them, right? And so that means, again, it's an open ecosystem. Anyone can make a car, develop, work with us to basically sell and use it inside. And we're more than happy that other people can make money on it. We provide the racetracks, we add more value, you bring more community, and we want to be as inclusive as possible. So the vision for Rev obviously is, there's, over 1.9 billion people, actually maybe 2 billion people who view motorsports. F1 in particular, of course, thanks to the Netflix show, amongst other things, has really sort of taken off.
I became a big F1 fan because of the show.
Right, yeah. And of course, MotoGP and Formula E are no slouches either, right? So, the point being that, we're really trying to sort of build the big sort of motorsports metaverse basically with Rev. And I think if you like motorsports, if you like speed and adrenaline, and you like cars, then come join Rev. Give it a shot. It's not expensive. Join the Telegram. Join the Discord. We welcome all of you.
Just incredible. I personally, obviously, as I just said, big motorsports fan, and just the vision so early on to be planning this, it just feels like you're seeing the future before we all are yet. So on that note, what's coming next? What are the big things that people should be looking out for? Say I missed everything. I feel like I even missed Rev, right? What should I be looking for? What's the activities I should be doing to get myself more deeply, my awareness, to expand my awareness and potentially get in early on the next thing? How should I go about looking for these things?
So the very first thing, and I do this with everything myself, just so you understand, I may be an executive in our business, but I try all our games. And I actually try our portfolio games too, because I enjoy it, which means I don't have a lot of time spare, but I do that, right? And I play with my kids and we try games out and whatever. So I think it's the same for all of us here, which is if you want to know the space well, then you need to get involved in it. And I don't suggest that you necessarily get involved with every game, but you got to get involved with something to understand. Join the community, talk to them, see what it is. One of the things that has been challenging on blockchain games is that you have to get involved with it to understand it, right? Whereas sometimes with tokens, I can maybe just follow it and say, oh, well, this guy said it was great, or my friend said it's good, and it seems easy. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why art, NFTs, and collectibles were the ones that in the NFT space that took off first before games, which is of course dominating today, because art is kind of not a utility value. I don't have to understand it so intrinsically well. I have to just look at the community, maybe who else owns it, some reference pricing, is it like a Picasso, is it not, whatever it is that you're sort of valuing, it's easier. And collectibles is kind of similar. Oh, LeBron James, he's famous. Oh, there's only a certain number. So the determining idea of what you can give value is easier. But with games, it's harder. It's like investing in real estate in a city. If I want to buy real estate in New York, but I've never been to New York, how do I know what's valuable, right? How do I know it's the right price? I have to go in and I have to study it, right? Mm-hmm. But once I study it, once I go in there and I'm in that rabbit hole, I find the deals, I find the opportunities. I get to know people who are in that space too, and I forge relationships, and off I go. So I think we all have to do the same thing, right? Which is that we have to go play a game or two that we like. And if you like Axie Infinity, go play that. If you like real estate, go get involved in Sandbox. If you like motorsports, go into Rev, right? If you like pets, but maybe you want to try something a little different from Axie, try my DeFi pet, right? I mean, if you want to try something different, try Splinterlands. I mean, there are so many games out there that you can try, and many of them are early, of course, right? So they're not as sophisticated as you expect. But it's the same, back in mobile gaming days, in the early mobile gaming days, like Mafia Wars or Angry Birds, provided a lot of enjoyment and weren't that sophisticated, but they provided you with understanding. So if you want to be involved in this and get deep into that space, then I do ask that you should try and play. And here's the other thing, if you have friends that play or children, right? Your children really, certainly for me, are the eye to the future, right? And often when you think of, older parents who try to stop their kids from playing games, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't control that, but playing games is, they don't look at it from the perspective of what they want, right? They just look at it from what they think may or may not be right. And that's a different conversation. But the thing is that they provide a lens. What do your children want for their Christmas or for their birthday is likely something virtual, right? It's not something physical, right? And so so if you can look at through their lens, then you can basically observe trends as well.
Well, I could talk to you for hours. Unfortunately, we don't have the time. I thank you so much for coming on the show, Yat. We hope to have you back very soon. This has been an absolutely amazing episode. Guys, if you guys enjoyed this, smash that like button, give Yatsu some love. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at YSU, and just keep up to date on the Animoca projects. If you haven't noticed a trend, everything they touch turns to gold. So I have to start calling you the alchemist. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely incredible to have you on. We certainly hope to have you back soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, honestly, I couldn't express the gratitude I have for Yat, his knowledge. Obviously, he's an investor in my projects, and he's really done an entire service to the industry, that is NFTs, specifically as they pertain to gaming. And he is a visionary there. OpenSea, $1 billion in volume, and we're not even halfway through, or we're just over halfway through August. Axie Infinity, completely reshaping gaming itself. Dapper Labs and Flow Blockchain, NBA Top Shots, the actual on-ramp, the mainstream hit of the NFT ecosystem over the last sort of 12 months or so. And the list goes on and on. Absolutely incredible stuff. Now, I did want to talk about one question that was brought up here, which is that somebody asked whether or not this is an edition of 9,999. No, this is what we call open edition, which will be cut off after a certain amount of time here where you can't mint anymore. So it'll never reach 9,000. It's just open for those who want to mint it. No gas war, nothing like that. So that's why this edition is shown like that. But it is not actually 9,000. It will be a time limited edition, or what they call an open edition. I definitely wanted to talk about a few other things here. Sorry, let me get back here. I wanted to talk a little bit about these historical projects. Now, there is a trend in crypto land here where historical projects have started to get this astronomical value, absolutely astronomical value. We're seeing it with CryptoPunks as like a store of value for the entire NFT movement. And so these CryptoPunks, were given out for free in 2017, and yet they've now managed to get a floor price, meaning the cheapest of any of the NFTs in this collection are worth over $150,000. And some of the most expensive are trading for tens of millions. This is reality here. This is a real world growth of an asset class that is extremely scarce. And so I wanted to put this up because a lot of people are wondering, hey, well, what's the next CryptoPunks? How can I get the next big thing? And well, look, I don't know what it is. A lot of this will probably go down as tulip mania. Who knows? But there is some logic here that these early formative projects are worth looking into. So I wanted to put this up here. It's the anatomy of the early NFT projects, and it's something worth looking at if you want to understand where some historic value might lie. Now, I didn't get to a super chat here, which is about the Gamey token. I want to interject here that Gamey, as well as many of the other Animoca projects, are part of their portfolio, and Yat is one of the most generous people with his time in giving them advice, guidance, and helping them interweave their partnerships with other projects. So I would imagine that is how this fits in. Same with things like Limpo and other tokens. We also have finally, where is it? Oh, yeah, we showed the car. Well, look, we're coming up here on over an hour. This has been a phenomenal episode. Remember, we have the giveaway of 1,000 REVV NFTs. All you have to do is fill out the Google form and you'll be entered to win. Make sure you put in the information required there. Again, I wish I could talk about NFTs and interview Yat and just continue this live stream for hours and hours on end. But unfortunately, Google and YouTube and the algorithm doesn't like that. So we have to end it here. But I just want to reiterate that this is the beginning of an entire generational shift to digital life. The growth of the NFT industry, especially as we've seen it in 2021, this isn't even the tip of the iceberg. We can't even see the iceberg. And what Yat referred to when he was talking about young people, the youth, his kids, preferring digital items to physical items, this is a change of understanding of where value sits from something physical to something digital that can be shared and interacted with in the open and digital economies and worlds of tomorrow. What NFTs present is the opportunity to have uniqueness, personality, ownership, property, assets, to demonstrate who you are as a person in the digital world. And that is a trend that I can only see getting more and more and more popular over time, whether or not many of these NFT collections completely crash and burn, which a lot of them probably will. However, I would also argue that in the history of NFTs, we are so early that you could probably view what we're doing right now, even all of the profile picture projects, as somewhat historic, or at least a historic moment for NFTs. So keep that in mind as we navigate this industry, that we are literally writing history as we go through and do things like buy a cartoon on OpenSea. It's truly fascinating. Well, that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you did, make sure you destroy that like button. It's a free and easy way to support the channel. There was so much information in here provided by one of the most legendary and fantastic human beings and investors in the entire crypto and NFT space, Yat Siu of Animoca Brands. If you guys got value, please destroy that like button. As always, if you want more content like this, make sure you subscribe and put that bell button on. That bell is your key to getting the best information in the entire crypto space. As always, you can find me on Twitter at Elio Trades. The link is in the description, and I will see you very soon on the next episode. I'm off to go buy this cartoon drop because I love the art and I can't wait to get myself one of those open editions. I hope everyone's having a safe and sound day here on Tuesday in mid-August 2021 as we creep towards what feels like another bull euphoria moment here in crypto. Opportunities are all around us. I hope you guys are having fun. I hope you guys are stacking up your chips and getting ready for a complete transition into the future that is digital native, powered by crypto, blockchain, and NFTs. Thank you all for joining me on Non-Fungible Tuesdays, and I'll see you very soon on the next one.